Hello, everyone. I'm Anita Sharma. Welcome to AnewZ as we commemorate the third anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war. Tonight, we will go back to when the war started and also take a good look at where we are right now and also discuss what may lie ahead amid talks to end the conflict. Talks that, for now, are taking place between Russia and the United States. We will also show you the dramatic toll of this war with thousands dead and millions now refugees. But we begin with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky once again reaffirming his desire to stay the course.
Hope that we can finish this war this year, not in 3 years. It's very, very difficult. Very difficult for all our nation to go through this war, but with all respect to our soldiers and our people. So I can't speak about 3 years. If we speak about how to prepare security because of the Russia, they can come back in 10 years if we will not be prepared. They will not come back if we will pressure them, put them to their place, to their territory. And if Ukraine will be in EU and in NATO in closest years, of course it will help us very much.
Joining me now is my colleague and host of Dialogue of Civilizations, Orkan Amashov, who will be with us throughout this special coverage on AnewZ. Orkan, thank you so much for being with us tonight. You just heard from the Ukrainian president. He's still on a quest for NATO membership. Now, you and I have talked extensively with key experts who say this is a no-fly zone for Russia.
Indeed, yes. Although it is abundantly clear to everybody that Ukraine will not be a member of NATO anytime soon, and this is very clear to Russians as well. And it's not just because Russians do not want Ukraine to be a member of the, NATO, but because Europeans actually are not ready to go this way, and fundamentally it is vital for Ukraine to remain hopeful about this prospect. You cannot deprive a sovereign nation of the right to become a member of any trade or military bloc it wants to be. Therefore, that will remain there, but realistically it's not going to happen anytime soon. But what may happen, not NATO membership, not Article 5 protection, but some security guarantees in the shape of European troops on the ground, providing that necessary security element with some external American backstop. That is realistically possible, but not NATO membership.
There are so many moving parts here, hence this special. A lot has happened today as we mark this third anniversary, Orkan. We have to also address the UN General Assembly today. What exactly happened there?
Well, it shows the growing rift between the United States and European countries. Those European countries, France, Britain, Germany and others, and the United States have always acted in line against Russia. But now what happened is that there was an original US proposal which the text of which did not entail the language involving aggression, full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And that proposal was subsequently amended adding to that text words like full-scale invasion, territorial integrity, sovereignty of Ukraine, and eventually was adopted with US opposing to what was its original proposal. So they opposed to the amended version of their original proposal, and the argument expressed by the United States was that if we want to find an end, to find a swift end to this war, we need to retract our initial position, otherwise it would not lead to anywhere. And it looks like that this rift between Trump administration and Europeans are going to exacerbate further.
No surprise there, right?
There was an element of surprise because what Trump did actually in early January and then in early February was quite extraordinary by the US foreign policy standards. Effectively what is happening here, at least on a rhetorical level, US is siding with Russia against its European allies, and transatlantic alliance, the future of this alliance is at stake, and the future does not look particularly bright.
Right. And no surprise, referring to the fact that we're seeing this growing rift essentially between Europe and U.S. President Donald Trump. Morgan, thank you so much for that. Please stand close by with us here. Meantime, February 24th, 2022 created a harsh new reality for Ukraine that would essentially become the largest conflict in Europe since World War II. The Russia-Ukraine war was and remains a brutal clash, devastating millions of lives in Ukraine. It has also redrawn the lines on both physical and geopolitical maps.
That morning, Russian forces launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, crossing its borders from multiple directions, including from Belarus. The attack was swift and brutal. Cities were bombed and airstrikes rained down. Civilians found themselves caught in real-life nightmare. The world watched in disbelief as Russian tanks, which had been amassing along the border for months, advanced on the neighboring country. Millions of Ukrainian women, children, and those unable to fight fled their homeland, seeking refuge in neighboring countries. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, by the end of 2022, over 6 million Ukrainians had left in search of safety in other countries. Entire families walked for miles, taking only what they could carry, and nations the world over opened their doors to those in need. The Russian military planned to quickly capture Kiev, topple the Ukrainian government, and force a swift surrender. However, the Ukrainian forces, bolstered by fierce resistance from civilians, were able to halt the advance. The Battle of Kiev, lasting from February to March 2022, became a pivotal moment in the war. By April, Russian forces were forced to retreat. One thing was clear: Ukraine would fight back. As Russian forces withdrew from Kiev, the world was confronted with the horrific images emerging from the city of Bucha, northwest of the capital. Mass graves, civilians shot at point-blank range, and signs of systematic torture were discovered, revealing the scale of atrocities committed in a matter of weeks at the start of the full-scale fighting. The Bucha massacre sent shockwaves around the world. It became a symbol of the brutal nature of the invasion and served as a stark wake-up call about the human cost of war.
Теперь пошли танки.
In the south, the city of Kherson fell into It marked a significant strategic victory for Russia, giving it control over a key port and gateway to the rest of southern Ukraine for a period. Amid the chaos of war, Mariupol, a coastal city in the southeast, became a focal point of Russia's military campaign. The Russian military carried out devastating and deadly air on a maternity hospital. Just days later, the Mariupol Drama Theatre was struck. Signs painted in Cyrillic outside the theatre clearly stated that children were inside. The venue was well known to be the city's largest bomb shelter, with hundreds of people sheltering there at any given time. The hospital was similarly marked to warn fighters that it was a civilian space. In April 2022, the Russian flagship warship, the Moskva, was sunk in the Black Sea, providing a major blow to Russian naval power, both symbolically and militarily. Mariupol, after months of brutal siege, eventually fell to Russian forces in May 2022. The Azovstal steelworks became a symbol of Ukrainian resistance, as thousands of Ukrainian soldiers held out in the face of relentless bombardment for 80 days. Shortly after Mariupol's fall, dozens of Ukrainian prisoners of war, mostly from the Azov battalion, were killed in an explosion at a detention facility in Olenivka. The incident, along with the other atrocities committed in the city, was widely condemned as a war crime. Strategically located in the Black Sea, Zmyiny, or Snake, Island became a symbol of Ukrainian defiance. Early in the war, Ukrainian soldiers stationed there famously told a Russian warship to go to hell as it attempted to seize the landmass. Though Russia initially captured the landmass, Ukrainian forces managed to retake it in June 2022.
Today, we are on Snake Island.
After months of heavy fighting, in September 2022, Ukrainian forces launched a counter-offensive in the Kharkiv region. Russian soldiers, already stretched thin, were forced to retreat. The liberation of Kharkiv was seen as a turning point, signaling a shift in the momentum of the war. In October 2022, a dramatic attack on the Kerch Bridge, which links Russia to annexed Crimea, further escalated tensions. The bombing of this bridge was seen as a direct challenge to Russia's control over the region. Following Ukraine's successes on the battlefield, Russia shifted its strategy to target the country's energy infrastructure. Starting in October 2022, Russia launched a series of devastating missile strikes on Ukraine's power grid, causing widespread blackouts in Kyiv and other major cities. These attacks not only left millions without electricity, but they also marked the beginning of a prolonged campaign aimed at crippling Ukraine's civilian infrastructure. In November 2022, Ukraine achieved another monumental victory, the liberation of Kherson. Russian forces withdrew, and Ukrainian forces entered to reclaim what was lost. The liberation of Kherson was considered a military and symbolic triumph. In March 2023, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin, accusing him of war crimes related to the unlawful deportation of children from Ukraine. Drone strikes have become an integral part of modern-day warfare and have been used by both sides over the past 3 years. On May 3rd, 2023, a drone strike targeted the Kremlin, damaging the building but causing no casualties. Russia accused Ukraine of attempting to assassinate President Vladimir Putin, while Ukraine denied involvement. Later, Ukraine launched a wave of long-range drone attacks against military and industrial targets inside Russia, targeting refineries in particular. Overnight, between February 22nd and 23rd, 2025, Russia launched an unprecedented barrage of drone strikes against Ukraine. A number made it through Ukrainian defenses across the country. The Kremlin drone incident was followed by strikes on Ukrainian ports, disrupting vital grain deliveries to the rest of the world. Ukraine, a major grain exporter, found its agricultural infrastructure under constant attack. This had a knock-on effect around the world, exacerbating global food shortages and deepening the international economic impact of the war. In May 2023, after months of brutal fighting, Bakhmut, a city in eastern Ukraine, fell to Russian forces. This marked the first significant territorial gain for Russia in a long period. The Kakhovka Dam was destroyed in June 2023, causing severe flooding in southern Ukraine. The dam's destruction displaced thousands of people and disrupted water supplies to nearby areas. Water from the dam's reservoir is also used to cool the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest. The Kakhovka Dam and the nearby power plant have been under full Russian control since March 2022. Both sides blamed each other for the attack. In June 2023, the Wagner Group, a powerful Russian paramilitary force, staged a rebellion against the Russian government. Throughout the war, the group had been recruiting soldiers from within Russia's prisons in an attempt to compensate for personnel shortages on the battlefield in Ukraine. However, in a turn of events halfway through 2023, Wagner members marched toward Moscow. It was a short-lived but intense rebellion, which appeared to expose fractures within Russia's highest echelons and raised questions about the stability of Putin's leadership. 2 months later, the group's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, died in a plane crash. Throughout 2024, Ukraine launched a series of counter-offensives to attempt to reclaim territory from Russia. These focused on the south and east, including Kherson and Donbass. With support from Western allies, Ukraine made significant gains. Despite heavy resistance, these efforts marked a shift in momentum in the war. In a further escalation of violence, the Children's Hospital in Kiev was hit. The strike focused on the hospital's facilities, resulting in the deaths of several children and medical staff, and leaving many others injured. Over the course of the war, dozens of Ukrainian cities have endured relentless bombardment, with residential areas, schools, and hospitals among the sites being targeted. In late 2024, Ukraine launched a bold offensive into the Kursk region, a key stronghold in western Russia. Using advanced Western weapons and new tactics, Ukrainian forces broke through Russian defenses and reclaimed significant territory. This marked the first major Ukrainian push into Russian territory. Late in 2024, reports also emerged that North Korean soldiers had been deployed to the Kursk region to assist Russian forces. This unexpected move marked a significant escalation in international involvement, as North Korea had previously provided weapons, but not troops, to its ally. The deployment raised concerns about further militarization and the potential for more foreign involvement in the conflict.
All right, let's talk now about the Russia-China relationship. Once again, joined by my colleague Orkan Amashov. Xi Jinping essentially has come out and said, state media there reporting that he had a chat with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he says, and I quote, bilateral ties cannot be influenced, Orkan, by a third party.
Yes, indeed, the language here is incredibly important.
Yes.
I'll get back to the exact elements of the language employed during that phone conversation, which took place probably a few hours ago this morning. There are two fundamental reasons have been said to be at the heart of Trump's current policy towards Ukraine. One of them is to normalize relations with Russia, and Ukraine being viewed as an obstacle on the way to normalization of relations. This is one thing, in order to be able to concentrate on China. And the second element is to drive a wedge between China and Russia for geostrategic purposes. But what is also very clear that the first purpose is absolutely fundamental, is to achieve some sort of deal there and also have this minerals deal secured with Ukraine. As long as this telephone conversation is concerned, my feeling is that this conversation was initiated by China.
Okay.
And the language employed there is very interesting. They talk about will and woe, about common values, about third-party interference not being in a position of affecting anything fundamental about Russia and China. And this sort of language, I remember, was used back in 2019 as well, on the 70th anniversary of US-China relations. And that effectively shows that under the circumstances, China wants to be seen as a key player and very close to Russia, because quite frankly, China had some hopes. They wanted to be a peacemaker in Ukraine. There was some talk about China acting as a peacemaker and also have some peacemakers on the ground, and they now seem to be sidelined.
Speaking of peacemakers, we have had U.S. President Donald Trump earlier today hosting Emmanuel Macron ahead of the talks, essentially telling reporters that European peacemakers, Putin essentially would agree to European peacemakers in Ukraine as part of a potential deal to end the war. What are your thoughts on that, Orkhan?
I think it's quite realistic.
Okay.
I think Putin would agree to some European troops on the ground, provided that their numbers are overall limited, is one thing, provided they don't have Article 5 protection. Number two, provided they are not very close to front line, they are somewhere it's very close to Kyiv and other territories. They should not be on the front line. There should be no imminent danger of military escalation between those peacekeepers and Russian forces. And that is something which could be deemed realistic. And also, of course, Putin will need some sort of guarantee entailed within that deal that Ukraine will not join NATO. He will need some other guarantees from Ukraine, and also plus he will need probably, before that deal is signed, there will be need for elections. I think that's also part of what we call three-stage peace process.
Okay, a lot to look forward to on that front. Orkhan, thank you so much. That is, of course, Orkhan Ashimov joining us here. We'll get back to Orkhan in just a second. Meantime, let's take a closer look from the early stages of the conflict to the present-day situation, a fluid one that sees Russia and Ukraine claiming battle victories while also suffering significant losses.
On February 24, 2022, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It began with dozens of missile strikes on cities all over Ukraine and Russian ground troops quickly moving in, including from Belarus. Within a few weeks, Russia was in control of large areas of Ukraine and had advanced to the suburbs of Kyiv. But they hit very strong Ukrainian resistance almost everywhere and faced serious logistical problems. By April, Ukraine had defeated the Russian forces on the outskirts of Kyiv, and by November, the picture had changed dramatically. Ukraine reclaimed vast parts of the Kharkiv, Mykolaiv and Kherson regions, and Russia had withdrawn completely from the north. Since then, the battle has been mostly in the east of Ukraine, with Russian forces slowly gaining ground over many months. Let's fast forward to May 2023, when Russia claimed control of Bakhmut after months of fighting. The following month, Ukraine launched its second counter-offensive. But take a look at how little it had impacted the front lines by time it ended in autumn. This was the picture as we came to the end of 2023 and moved into early 2024. Ukrainian forces are starting to show signs of strain, with ammunition shortages and mounting casualties. But in April 2024, after months of delay, the US House of Representatives finally approved a $61 billion package for Ukraine. Bear this in mind when we move into the following months, and Russia launched a new offensive in the northeast region of Kharkiv, capturing a string of villages and opening up a new front in the war. These advances continued steadily until the end of July, with further gains reported in eastern Ukraine. But in August, Ukraine surprised Russia with an incursion into the Kursk region, moving the war onto Russian territory and giving Kyiv a potential bargaining chip. Russian forces maintained pressure in eastern Ukraine, with strategic towns in the Donbas region under heavy assault. But throughout September, Ukraine undertook multiple counter-offensives aimed at stemming Russian gains. By late 2024, the conflict had entered a phase marked by relentless drone strikes and missile attacks. On the 19th of November, Ukrainian forces fired several long-range US-supplied missiles into Russian territory for the first time. Russia retaliated 2 days later by launching new ballistic missile strikes against Ukrainian targets. Now, here is the picture at the end of 2024. In January 2025, Russian forces seized Velika Novosilka in the Donetsk region. Russia is attempting to leverage this, so we're seeing Russian troops re-intensify their operations here as they attempt to move closer towards Dnipro.
All right, great information, Katie. That, of course, is our Katie Wilson. Since the start of the conflict, the Ukrainian president has shifted from urgent pleas for help to straight-up declarations of leadership and defiance, only to come full circle with, once again, urgent calls for assistance. Let's take a look now at Volodymyr Zelensky's first address just hours after Russia's full-scale attack to his statements at the United Nations and G7 summits.
What do we hear today? It's not just rocket explosions, battles, the roar of aircraft. It is the sound of a new Iron Curtain lowering and closing Russia away from the civilized world. Our national task is to make this curtain pass not through our Ukrainian territory, but at the home of Russians. I'm here. We're not putting down our arms. We will be defending our country. Today we are showing everybody that's exactly what we are. The European Union is going to be much stronger with that. So that's for sure, without you, Ukraine is going to be lonely, lonesome. We have proven our strength. We have proven that at a minimum, we are exactly the same as you are. So do prove that you are with us. Do prove that you will not let us go. Do prove that you indeed are Europeans, and then life will win over death, and light will win over darkness. Glory be to Ukraine. I have a dream. These words are known to each of you today. I can say I have a need. I need to protect our sky. I need your decision, your help. So where is the security that the Security Council must guarantee? There is no security, although there is a Security Council, as if nothing happened. So where is the peace that the United Nations was created to guarantee? It is obvious that the key institution of the world, which must ensure the coercion of any aggressors to peace, simply cannot work effectively.
President of Ukraine.
We defeated Russia in the battle for minds of the world. We have no fear, nor should anyone in the world have it. Ukraine's gained this victory, and it gives us courage, which inspires the entire world. In Britain, the king is an Air Force pilot. And in Ukraine today, every Air Force pilot is a king.
Nine years ago, the neighbor became an aggressor. A year ago, the aggressor became an executioner, looter, and terrorist. We have no doubt that they will be held accountable. We have no doubt that we will win. It was a year of resilience, a year of care, a year of bravery, a year of pain, a year of hope, a year of endurance, a year of unity, the year of invincibility, the furious year of invincibility.
We protect Ukraine, and thus we protect freedom. And when
We build Ukraine, we'll build freedom, country, region, continent, world. It's a global task.
Each decade, Russia starts a new war. Parts of Moldova and Georgia remain occupied. Russia turned Syria into ruins. And if not Russia, the chemical weapons would have never been used there in Syria. Russia has almost swallowed Belarus. It is obviously threatening Kazakhstan and other Baltic states. And the goal of the present war against Ukraine is to turn our land, our people, our lives, our resources into a weapon against you, against the international rules-based order.
We started this way together 2 years ago, not sure what challenges would lie ahead. But now we can clearly say that our leadership is sufficient to restore security. When the world's leading democracies are truly determined, this determination overcomes all challenges. We have already achieved much, and the world feels that Putin can lose this war. And when he loses, it will mean that not just someone wins, but the entire global community of nations and international law as such will prevail. We must ensure this. The key is the political will to implement everything, to provide exactly the level of supply that will help. If this does not happen, it will become one of the most disgraceful pages in history. If America or Europe are defeated by Iranian Shahed drones or Russian fighter jets, Russian evil should not be encouraged by weak decisions, delays in deliveries, or hesitation. The joint success of everyone in the world who values life should be tangible. There should be no restrictions on the range of weapons for Ukraine, while terrorists have no such restrictions. Defenders of life should face no restrictions on weapons, while Russia uses all kinds of its own weapons, as well as Shahed drones and ballistic missiles from North Korea.
Putin has stolen much already, but he will never steal the world's future, I'm sure. Thank you. Slava Ukraine.
Europe deserves to be strong, and for this, Europe needs the EU and NATO. Is this possible without Ukraine, and without a just end to Russia's war against Ukraine? I'm certain the answer is no. Only real security guarantees for us will serve as real security guarantees for everyone in Europe, and we must ensure that America also sees us as essential.
Ukraine will never accept deals made behind our backs without our involvement. And the same rule should apply to all of Europe. No decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine, no decisions about Europe without Europe. Europe must have a seat at the table when decisions about Europe are being made. Anything else is zero. If we are left out of negotiations about our own future, then we all lose. Look at what Putin is trying to do now. This is his game. Putin wants one-on-one talks with America. Just like before the war, when they met in Switzerland and looked like to carve up the world. Next, Putin will try to get the US president standing on Red Square on May 9th this year, not as a respected leader, but as a probe in his own performance. We don't need that. We need real success. We need real peace.
We need strong agreements with the United States, agreements that will truly work. I gave instructions to work swiftly and very sensibly. Economy and security must always go hand in hand, and the details of the agreements matter. The better they are structured, the greater the results.
Let's take a look now at how Ukraine's resistance has endured the shifting political tides in the West and whether we're on the brink of a new Cold War.
Today, this war is no longer just about Ukraine. It is a battle reshaping global power structures. From the early days, Ukraine's resilience has been strengthened by Western support. Billions of dollars in military aid, modern weaponry, and economic assistance helped Ukraine push back against Russian aggression. But as the war dragged on, it became more than a military conflict. It evolved into a defining moment for global alliances, economic resilience, and the future of the old rules-based international order.
If President Putin wins in Ukraine, it's a tragedy for the Ukrainians, but it's also dangerous for us. It sends a message that when they use military force, they get what they want, authoritarian leaders. So it's in our security interest to support Ukraine.
Despite NATO's firm stance, political realities in Western capitals have shifted. The economic strain of sustaining Ukraine's war effort, rising inflation, and shifting political priorities have tested the limits of Western unity. The 2024 US elections have brought this debate to a critical point. Donald Trump's 2024 re-election and subsequent stance on the war sent shockwaves through Kyiv and European capitals. The transactional nature of his politics, his isolationist stance, skepticism toward NATO, and focus on America First policies have cast uncertainty over US aid to Ukraine. In some of his first statements on the topic, his stance towards Ukraine starts to take shape. Trump's remarks triggered a diplomatic crisis. His additional suggestion of potential negotiations with Putin and his questioning of NATO's role sparked alarm across Europe. While Kyiv scrambled to reassure its allies, concerns grew that diminished support from Washington could embolden Russia.
Я не збираюсь визнавати 500. Хто б що не говорив, як би ми не спілкувались, при всій повазі, ще раз, при всій повазі до партнерів, але, я стійко стою, тому що це правдива ситуація.
As Western unity is tested, Russia is forging new alliances, strengthened ties between Moscow and Beijing, growing military cooperation with Iran, and North Korea's supply of weapons have shifted global power dynamics. Experts have been left questioning if we are entering a new Cold War. Beyond geopolitics, the heaviest burden of the war is on Ukraine's people. 3 years of relentless attacks have left cities in ruins, millions displaced, and the economy devastated.
Whatever the outcome, this war will have no winners, only losers.
As the war enters its fourth year, the battlefield remains active, but the political landscape is shifting rapidly. The crucial question now, will 2025 bring an end to this war, or will it escalate into an even broader conflict?
It's a good question. Let's bring in Rudolf Miovich, CEO of the Christian Medical Association based in Lviv, Ukraine. Rudolf, thank you so much for being with Orkin and I on this third anniversary of the Russian-Ukraine war. Let's talk a little bit more about French President Emmanuel Macron, if we can. He's in D.C. He's having talks with the President of the United States. Ahead of the talks, we had Donald Trump essentially saying France and the United Kingdom, and I quote, haven't done anything to end the war. Your thoughts on that?
Good evening. Thank you so much for the invitation.
You bet.
Yeah, today is very important day when we have in Ukraine main leaders, and in US they have Trump and Macron negotiations. We'll see what is going to end, but unfortunately, again, Trump is using some of the facts in the weird way that is not actually true in the end of the day, because every day, every month, all European Western allies and Zelensky tried to stop the war. The question is not Western country trying to stop the war. Only one guy can stop the war. It's Putin, because he started it. So, and we today saw a tweet from 2022 in February. Zelensky tried to call to Putin, and he tried to talk with him to stop the war. But there was no reply, there was silence. And I'm definitely sure that all leaders of Europe, especially Macron and Germany, they had strong economy relationship. So in the world of Trump, when money is ruling, obviously all sanction that was done for Europe was very painful for them, because they definitely tried to stop it. So in one way, we have sanctions that impacting negatively on Europe. In another way, we see medical, military, financial help to Ukraine from Europe to Ukraine. So we cannot tell that Europe leaders didn't try to stop Putin. The question is not in trying, the question is what will give Trump to Putin for negotiation. So if you're ready to give up all territories, Ukraine, basically he said that he doesn't care, pro-Russia, Ukrainian government will be in Kyiv, and he just needed peace. So that kind of deal, anyone can do.
Rudolf Orkan is here. My question to you is very simple, and it's going to be a very, very sort of open question. How betrayed do you feel about the current situation? Because the former American president used to say that they would defend Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty up to the hilt. They would defend it whatever cost may be. And they were saying that Ukraine's sovereignty is not a matter for transaction. And now current US president is saying that Ukraine one day may be Russian, that Ukraine realistically will not be able to return to its pre-2014 borders. It's not just the language that has changed profoundly, but also some of the practical actions taken by the US administration. The question is very simple. How betrayed do you feel by virtue of the current circumstances?
Of course, all Ukrainians feel betrayed, but I think it's only a superficial picture. We were feeling betrayed the whole time because basically what's happening, we are fighting alone with Russia. Yes, a great support is coming, but if you're going to look at this support, only 31 tanks from US, 0 F-16 from US, 1 or 2 Patriots, if I remember correctly, from US. So literally, US has never tried to fully support Ukraine. Yes, they are with Biden, like we will stand at least as it needed, but in the end of the day, he didn't try to help to win Ukraine. He tried to help not to lose Ukraine. I'm talking to soldiers, so they know what kind of help they receive from US. So they feel betrayed, especially in 2023 in counter-offense. When they receive tanks broken without engine, old from 1970, 1960 years, so they already felt betrayed, to be honest. And you heard maybe that 80% of damage for Russia right now is done by drones, basically by Ukrainian drones. 99% of drones are made in Ukraine. So when you're asking, like, do you feel betrayed? Definitely we are. But this what happening when you have such kind of enemy, and it's only open what is really happening in the world and real feelings from US to Ukraine.
Rudolf, final quick question to you, sir. In this tricky game of chess, it looks like all parties involved and also those who want to be involved have a trick up their sleeve. They have a move up their sleeve. What's your quick reaction to the Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin phone call today? It looks like China is saying, look, don't forget about us. We're here. We're with Russia. And there's no influence that's going to change this current relationship at play. Your thoughts, sir?
It's a great question. As you mentioned recently, US is trying to be in relationship between Russia and China. And if you're familiar with the Project 2025, that was done by Heritage Foundation, it's a strategy for a Trump campaign. And in one of those build relationship with Russia and make a weaker China. So I'm definitely sure that China will try to be a key player in this game. They already made negotiation with Canada about some of the trade that are very painful for US. And they will see this economical results in near months. So at least right now, we don't see the real results, but negotiation between China, US, and Russia will definitely happen. And it will impact on frontline because China is obvious supporter of war. We saw their drones, we saw their cars on the front line. So we definitely can see that China is not interested in independent Ukraine and sovereign country. They're interested in strong Russia or weak Russia that can give them a lot of resources as oil and gas.
Okay, great analysis all the way around. Thank you for joining us, Rudolf Miovich, as we mark this third anniversary. That, of course, is Rudolf Miovich. The profound toll of this ongoing conflict includes unimaginable loss and suffering, from a mother in Kyiv whose dreams were shattered during childbirth to a nurse treating young soldiers haunted by their daunting experiences. And throughout all of this, hope and a growing desire to seek a future without war. Let's look now at the resilience of the Ukrainian people and the universal longing for peace in the face of turmoil.
Ukraine, a nation exhausted by war, clings to a singular hope, an end to the conflict. But what does that truly mean? For some, it is silence in disguise. For others, it is the return of those who left and the embrace of family members they can only currently see in photographs. For many, it is simply the ability to dream of something beyond mere survival. Maria Palchukovska, a 26-year-old neurology nurse, works tirelessly to heal others. While she has not lost a family member, the war has stolen her peace bit by bit. She cares for young men returning from the front lines, who come back with missing limbs and eyes that have seen too much. Many are barely older than she is.
I'd like to wake up without air raid sirens. I want all my friends to come back home from the front lines, and I wish for the occupiers to leave Ukrainian land, restoring our borders to where the Ukrainian constitution says they should be.
In a Kyiv metro station turned bomb shelter, 27-year-old Daria Salwitska gave birth in a hospital where the wail of sirens replaced the cries of newborns.
I lost a normal pregnancy. I lost happy, positive days awaiting the arrival of my baby. Instead, there was a lot of stress, anxiety, and uncertainty. Giving birth was also very stressful, with much anxiety involved. Many good days and emotions have been lost.
For Tetiana Lozova, a principal soloist in the National Ballet, the war took away more than performances. It robbed her daughter of her childhood. Tetiana watches as her once carefree little girl now clutches her tiny backpack whenever they leave the house. I will truly feel that the war is over when my daughter starts dreaming about the things all children dream about. I want her to come to me one day and say, "Mom, I want to dream about toys and sweets, not about just staying alive." In Borodyanka, 81-year-old Taisia Herasmenko holds up a single sheet of paper, the confirmation of her son Roman's death. He was shot by Russian soldiers, she says. He staggered home, bleeding, and died hours later.
This is my son. He was 57 years old. He was killed. This paper confirms it. You can take a picture.
The scars of war run deep in Borodyanka, Bucha and Mariupol, where investigators continue to exhume bodies from mass graves. Experts say it could take years to build cases and hold perpetrators accountable, yet justice feels like a distant dream while the war continues.
Now, the thing to understand is these bombs are designed for heavy military targets, and to use those bombs in such an area, by definition, appears to be disproportionate and imprecise, and therefore, on the face of it, a war crime.
Civilians were dying right before our eyes. We heard people screaming in the basements of destroyed buildings. Because of the shelling, we couldn't evacuate them. We have a saying, if an operative policeman has buried 200 people, he should retire. I have 10 years to go before my pension. My limit is already exhausted.
Hanna Blobrova went to Mariupol with her fiancé, film director Mantas Kvedaraviches, to document the suffering in the city. Unfortunately, their mission turned into a search for his body after he was killed.
He's been killed, he's been murdered, and that is for sure. It's not a war, it's people who killed him. Everyone might be sitting and frightened, but they want to live their lives even it's the last second of them. Because everyone knows that if you would go to get some water outside, you might never be back.
On the other side of the border, Russian men flee their own battles. Some cross into Georgia with nothing but backpacks and fear in their eyes. Denis, a 34-year-old father of two, says, if this was a war to protect our home, I would fight. But this is a war about nothing.
People against the regime who are not ready to go to war, they are prepared to fight for truth, for a fair war. When you are defending your home, it is fair. You go and you are not afraid. But when you are fighting in a pointless war, killing your brother, it's a war about nothing. That's why people are leaving.
Like many, Denis chose exile over conscription. Pavel, another Russian man, left his wife behind in gridlocked traffic at the border.
My wife stayed in Russia. We arrived at the end of the traffic jam 40 hours ago. We realized it was a lost cause, and someone had to cross alone while the other caught up. She stayed, and I crossed with a child. I don't know when we will reunite. Maybe in a week if everything goes well at the borders.
Across the globe, various demonstrations have emerged in response to the ongoing conflict, reflecting widespread support for Ukraine and calls for freedom and justice. In many cities, people from diverse backgrounds unite to express solidarity with Ukraine, conveying messages of resilience, freedom, and the rejection of aggression. 3 years have passed since the war began. It has devastated communities, claimed countless lives, and shown no sign of resolution amid escalating tensions. A generation of children has known nothing but war. Families remain divided by borders, by graves, by exile. The longing for peace is universal yet fragile, as each day brings new losses. Hope is resilient. It clings to the voices of mothers, fathers, soldiers, and exiles. It lives in the hands that rebuild shattered homes, in the prayers whispered over unmarked graves, and in the defiant belief that one day the sirens will be silent. Until then, the people endure.
We talk about the political maneuvers in this chess game. Some would call it, Orkun, a sordid chess game, but judging from that report, we do have to address just the humanity that's been impacted here, just the tremendous toll this war has had on countless lives.
Absolutely, and one would hope that there will be an end to this, of course, conflict, this war, but at the expense of what? At the expense of Ukrainian sovereignty, at the expense of a deal with permanent consequences or not, that's a real question. What is very clear to everybody is that the extent of Western support shown for Ukraine has never been good enough to enable Ukraine to regain control over its eastern provinces. That was very clear from the beginning. The fundamental linchpin there was based on the idea that cumulative European support, cumulative Western support, including European and US support, was good enough just to enable Ukraine to continue its effort without enabling it to defeat Russia. And nothing has changed. No change has been made to that sort of policy. And now the reality is that even that support is not being shown. European leaders gathered today in Kiev in a display of solidarity.
All sorts of displays of solidarity.
But display of solidarity is very heartwarming and confidence-inducing, but it's not good enough. But the reality is that whatever criticism could be levied against Donald Trump, the reality is that an average US taxpayer is paying more for defense of Ukraine than average European taxpayer. This could be a blessing in disguise for the continent in terms of rethinking its own security system and also rethinking the approach maintained towards Ukraine. I think whatever is going to be attained probably is going to be temporary by its very nature. Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I'm processing what you're saying, and I'm also thinking about what you said just off the top of this particular chat. European leaders have a lot of reflecting to do, and they don't have any time really. Time's run out because they've been excluded from the negotiating table in Riyadh, as we covered extensively here on AnewZ. It was Russia. It was Russian officials alongside US officials deciding the fate of Ukraine. The best European leaders could do was just express shock and anger at being excluded. I keep talking about the chess move. Do they have a move? If so, what is it?
Well, we will see, really. If President Macron is in the United States today.
Correct.
And let's see what will come out of that meeting. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to be in the United States this Thursday. French and British positions are different. France is representing European Union, so they will be very forceful in the language employed. If you're asking me whether anything will come out of that, I'm very much skeptical about the positive result, but the UK could play a certain role, being a bridge between the continent and the United States of America.
Expand on that if you can.
Well, the reality is that when it comes to transatlantic alliance, it is very clear the US administration, current administration, does not view Ukraine at the top of the pecking order of the imminent priorities in terms of they want to sort this problem out, but they are not very passionate about the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. And at this stage, bearing in mind that Ukraine will not be able to retain its control or to regain its control over its eastern provinces, let alone Crimea, the guarantees provided must be very strong. Financial support must be quite robust. And whatever will be left of Ukraine, that truncated Ukraine with 80% of its sovereign territory, must be resilient enough to stand firm against Russia. That could be done, that is realistic, and Britain could play an important role in terms of ensuring that eventuality.
Okay, real quick, do you see Britain at all working with the EU? The EU needs some friends here, right? In terms of standing up against Trump.
In terms of quite extraordinary things happening, and what happened at the United Nations today is a very clear example of that sort of extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
So original US proposal did not entail the language related to aggression, occupation, full-scale invasion, and the rationale there was that if we want to achieve a deal, then it should take into account Russian position as well. But then it was rejected by Europeans.
Right.
So don't know what role Britain will play, but that role should be one of bringing these two players together.
Well, one thing is certain in this uncertainty, and that is we will, of course, continue to follow this story very closely. Orkan Amishov, thank you so much for your contribution, sir.
Pleasure.
To our team here at AnewZ, thank you for your contribution. And folks, thank you for watching this special coverage on AnewZ.